The morning sun beat down on Camp Lejeune with relentless intensity. Colonel Marcus Steele adjusted his uniform and checked his watch for the third time in 5 minutes. Today marked his first day commanding the 2nd Marine Division's elite sniper training program, and he intended to make an impression that would last. Steele had earned his reputation the hard way. 22 years in the Corps, 3 tours in Afghanistan, 2 in Iraq, and a chest full of medals that spoke to his dedication and skill. He believed in discipline above all else, and he had little patience for what he saw as the softening of modern military standards. As he walked across the training grounds, his eyes fell upon a figure lying prone behind a Barrett M82 rifle at the 1,000-yard range. The shooter wore standard Marine fatigues, but something about their posture seemed off to Steele. The body frame appeared smaller than typical, and the way they held themselves suggested a different approach to marksmanship than he was accustomed to seeing. Steele approached quietly, his boots making deliberate sounds on the gravel. The shooter remained motionless, completely focused on the target downrange. Through his binoculars, Steele could see the target clearly, a series of man-sized silhouettes arranged at various distances, some partially concealed behind barriers. The rifle cracked once. Then, again. Each shot came after a long pause, and Steele found himself growing impatient with the deliberate pace. In his experience, hesitation killed, and this shooter seemed to be taking far too much time between rounds. "Marine!" Steele barked, his voice carrying the authority of 2 decades in command. "What's your name and unit?" The shooter didn't move immediately, instead taking one more careful shot before slowly turning around. As they sat up and removed their cap, Steele felt his jaw tighten. Long hair fell around the Marine's shoulders, and he found himself looking at a young woman, probably no older than 22 or 23. "Staff Sergeant Riley Martinez, sir," she said, coming to attention with crisp precision. Her voice was steady, showing no sign of intimidation despite Steele's imposing presence. Steele's expression darkened. He had heard about the integration of women into combat roles, but seeing it firsthand stirred something uncomfortable in his gut. In his mind, the battlefield was no place for someone who looked like she should be working in an office or raising children. "Martinez," he said, his tone deliberately condescending, "what exactly are you doing on my range?" "Conducting precision marksmanship training as ordered, sir. I'm part of the advanced sniper course that begins this week." Steele walked over to the spotting scope and peered through it at the targets downrange. What he saw made him even more frustrated. Several of the silhouettes showed tight groupings in the center mass, with some shots placed with surgical precision in what would be instantly fatal zones. But Steele wasn't interested in accuracy right now. He was interested in making a point. "Your shooting technique is sloppy, Martinez. You're taking too much time between shots, and your positioning needs work." His words were sharp, designed to cut. "Maybe you'd be more comfortable in a support role, somewhere you can contribute without being a liability to real Marines." Martinez's expression didn't change, but Steele noticed a slight tightening around her eyes. "Sir, I believe my scores speak for themselves. I've maintained a 98% accuracy rating throughout the preliminary course." "Scores on a range don't mean anything in real combat, Marine. When bullets are flying and your brothers are depending on you, statistics won't save their lives." Steele stepped closer, using his 6'3" frame to tower over her 5'6" height. "I've seen what happens when people aren't cut out for this job. Good Marines die because someone else couldn't handle the pressure." The words hung in the air between them. Martinez maintained her military bearing, but Steele could see he had struck a nerve. Several other Marines training nearby had stopped their own exercises to watch the confrontation unfold. "With respect, sir," Martinez said carefully, "I've completed every requirement for this program and earned my place here through performance, not politics." Steele let out a harsh laugh. "Performance? You call this performance?" He gestured toward the targets. "Any decent Marine could put rounds on target at this distance. The real question is whether you can do it when it matters, when lives are on the line, when the enemy is shooting back." What Steele didn't know, what he couldn't have known from his brief observation, was that Martinez had already proven herself under exactly those conditions. Her personnel file, which he hadn't bothered to read thoroughly, contained details of her service that would have given him pause. But, in this moment, Steele was driven by assumptions and prejudices that clouded his judgment. He saw only what he expected to see, someone who didn't fit his narrow definition of a Marine sniper. "I want you to pack up your gear and report to the administrative section," Steele continued. "I'm recommending your transfer to a more appropriate assignment. The Corps has plenty of jobs that would better suit your particular skill set." Martinez's hands clenched briefly at her sides, but her voice remained steady. "Sir, I respectfully request the opportunity to demonstrate my capabilities before any transfer recommendations are made." "Your capabilities?" Steele's voice rose slightly. "I've seen everything I need to see, Martinez. You don't have what it takes for this program." The confrontation had drawn the attention of nearly everyone on the range. Other instructors paused their lessons, and trainee Marines watched with a mixture of curiosity and discomfort. The tension was palpable, crackling in the hot Carolina air. Master Sergeant David Thompson, the senior instructor for the sniper program, approached cautiously. He had worked with Martinez during her preliminary training and knew her capabilities firsthand, but he also understood the delicate politics of contradicting a new commanding officer. "Sir," Thompson interjected carefully, "perhaps we should discuss Staff Sergeant Martinez's qualifications in your office?" Steele turned his hard gaze on Thompson. "There's nothing to discuss, Master Sergeant. My decision is final." Thompson glanced at Martinez, seeing the controlled frustration in her eyes. He knew she was biting back words that could end her career if spoken to a superior officer. He also knew that Steele was making a massive mistake, but protocol demanded he handle this situation carefully. "Understood, sir," Thompson said. "However, Staff Sergeant Martinez is scheduled for a qualification exercise this afternoon. Perhaps she could complete that before any transfers are processed?" Steele considered this, his jaw working as he weighed his options. He was eager to establish his authority, but he also didn't want to appear unreasonable to the other instructors who would be watching his leadership style closely. "Fine," he said finally. "One qualification exercise. But, when she fails to meet standards, I want her off this program immediately." Martinez nodded sharply. "Thank you for the opportunity, sir." As Steele walked away, his boots echoing authoritatively across the range, Martinez began cleaning her rifle with methodical precision. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, but Thompson could see the tension in her shoulders. "You okay, Martinez?" Thompson asked quietly once Steele was out of earshot. "I'm fine, Master Sergeant. Just focused on this afternoon's exercise." Thompson nodded, but he was worried. He had seen what happened when personal conflicts interfered with military operations, and he sensed that this situation was far from over. Steele's approach was creating exactly the kind of hostile environment that could undermine unit cohesion and effectiveness. As the morning progressed, word of the confrontation spread throughout the base. Some Marines expressed support for Steele's traditional approach, while others questioned whether his judgment was clouded by bias. The divide was creating tension that went beyond the sniper program itself. Martinez spent the rest of the morning in solitude, preparing for the afternoon qualification. She checked and rechecked her equipment, ran through mental rehearsals of various scenarios, and maintained the disciplined focus that had carried her through every challenge in her military career. But, beneath the surface, emotions churned that she couldn't afford to show. Steele's words had reopened old wounds and triggered memories of every person who had doubted her capabilities based on her appearance rather than her performance. The afternoon exercise would be more than just a qualification test. It would be a defining moment that would either validate her place in the program or confirm Steele's assumptions about her unsuitability for the role. Neither Steele nor Martinez could have predicted how dramatically that afternoon would change everything. The afternoon qualification exercise was designed to test every aspect of a sniper's capabilities under pressure. Master Sergeant Thompson had set up a complex scenario that would push even experienced marksmen to their limits. Multiple targets at varying distances, time constraints, environmental challenges, and simulated combat stress would separate the truly elite from the merely competent. Colonel Steele positioned himself at the observation point, determined to watch Martinez fail firsthand. He had invited several other officers to witness what he expected would be a clear demonstration of why certain Marines weren't suited for specialized roles. The exercise simulates a real-world scenario, Thompson explained to the gathered observers. The sniper must eliminate multiple high-value targets while protecting friendly forces and civilians. Precision, speed, and decision-making under pressure are all critical factors. Martinez took her position at the starting point, her M40A5 rifle slung across her back and her ghillie suit partially assembled. The exercise would require her to move through varied terrain, establish multiple shooting positions, and engage targets in a specific sequence based on tactical priorities. "Ready, Staff Sergeant?" Thompson called out. "Ready, Master Sergeant." "Begin." Martinez moved with fluid efficiency through the wooded terrain. Her movements were deliberate but swift, each step calculated to minimize noise and exposure. Steele watched through binoculars, grudgingly acknowledging her fieldcraft skills while still convinced she would crumble under the shooting pressure. The first target appeared 400 yards away, partially concealed behind a barricade. Martinez dropped into a prone position, her rifle coming up smoothly. She controlled her breathing, calculated wind drift and elevation, and squeezed the trigger. The distinctive crack of the rifle echoed across the range, followed immediately by the ping of a successful hit. Through the spotting scope, observers could see the target had been struck center mass. "Lucky shot," Steele muttered, but Thompson noticed the precision of the hit placement. Martinez was already moving to the second position. The scenario required her to advance under simulated enemy fire, indicated by speakers broadcasting the sounds of incoming rounds and explosions. Many Marines found this audio distraction challenging, but Martinez seemed unaffected by the chaos. Her second target was a moving silhouette at 600 yards, designed to test her ability to lead a target and time her shot perfectly. She settled into position behind a fallen log, her body molding to the terrain with practiced ease. The moving target presented itself for only brief moments as it traveled between cover points. Martinez tracked its movement, calculated its speed and direction, and fired at what appeared to be empty air. 2 seconds later, the target mechanism indicated a direct hit. Steele's expression shifted from dismissive to puzzled. The shot had been exceptional, requiring skills that took years to develop. But he rationalized it as another fortunate accident, unwilling to revise his initial assessment. The third phase of the exercise pushed the difficulty even higher. Martinez had to identify and engage multiple targets simultaneously, distinguishing between enemy combatants and innocent civilians in a complex urban scenario mock-up. Making the wrong choice would result in automatic failure. She moved through the simulated buildings with tactical precision, clearing corners and checking angles with the thoroughness of someone who understood that carelessness killed. When she reached the final shooting position, she faced her greatest challenge yet. 3 figures were visible through windows in the target building. 2 were armed enemies, 1 was a hostage. The targets would only be visible for 30 seconds, and engaging them in the wrong order could result in the hostage's death. Martinez studied the scenario through her scope, analyzing the situation with cold professionalism. She identified the primary threat, the secondary target, and the positioning that would allow her to eliminate both enemies without endangering the civilian. Her first shot took down the enemy with the clearest shot at the hostage. The second shot, fired less than 3 seconds later, eliminated the remaining threat. Both hits were precise, instantly fatal, and executed with mechanical efficiency. Steele found himself leaning forward, his skepticism beginning to crack. The shooting display was undeniably impressive, but he still believed the real test lay ahead. The final phase of the exercise was designed to simulate extreme stress. Martinez had to engage a target at maximum range, 1,200 yards, while under time pressure and with simulated battlefield conditions affecting her position. At this distance, variables like wind speed, humidity, temperature, and even the rotation of the Earth could affect bullet trajectory. The shot required not just marksmanship skills but also extensive knowledge of ballistics and environmental factors. Martinez settled into her final position on a ridge overlooking the distant target. She pulled out her rangefinder, wind meter, and ballistic calculator. Her movements were methodical, professional, showing none of the haste that pressure often induced in lesser shooters. She adjusted her scope for elevation and windage, chambered around, and settled into her shooting position. Through her scope, the target appeared impossibly small, a tiny silhouette against the distant hillside. The wind was gusting unpredictably, making the shot even more challenging. Martinez waited, watching the vegetation between her position and the target, reading the wind patterns like a meteorologist. Then, in a moment of relative calm, she fired. The bullet's flight time at that distance was nearly 2 seconds. Everyone watching held their breath as they waited for the result. Through the spotting scopes, they could see the target clearly. The hit was perfect. Dead center. The range fell silent except for the whisper of wind through the trees. Even Steele was speechless, staring through his binoculars at the distant target with growing confusion. Master Sergeant Thompson broke the silence. Outstanding shooting, Staff Sergeant Martinez. You've completed the qualification with a perfect score. As Martinez began collecting her gear, Steele approached Thompson with obvious agitation. How is that possible? That shooting performance was exceptional? Thompson finished. Yes, sir. Staff Sergeant Martinez is one of the finest marksmen I've worked with in 15 years of instruction. Steele shook his head, unwilling to accept what he had witnessed. There must be some explanation. Equipment malfunction, modified targets, something. Thompson's expression grew serious. Sir, with respect, the only explanation is that Staff Sergeant Martinez is an extraordinary sniper. Her performance today was consistent with her training record. Training record? Yes, sir. Perhaps you should review her complete file. That evening, Steele sat in his office with Martinez's personnel folder spread across his desk. As he read through the documents, his confusion deepened into something approaching shock. Riley Martinez had enlisted in the Marines straight out of high school from a small town in Texas. Her father had been a Marine killed in Iraq when she was 16. Her initial test scores were exceptional, leading to her selection for advanced training programs. But it was her combat record that made Steele's blood run cold. Martinez had deployed to Afghanistan during her second year of service. She had been attached to a special operations unit as their designated marksman. Her official record showed 47 confirmed kills, all in support of combat operations. One particular incident stood out. Martinez's unit had been ambushed while providing security for a supply convoy. Pinned down by enemy fire from multiple positions, they had taken casualties and were in danger of being overrun. From a position 800 yards away, Martinez had systematically eliminated the enemy shooters one by one, allowing her unit to extract safely. Her shooting that day had saved the lives of 12 Marines, including 2 who were critically wounded. The citation for her Bronze Star with Valor was attached to the report. Steele read the words with growing unease. Staff Sergeant Martinez's exceptional marksmanship and tactical awareness under extreme combat conditions prevented the loss of numerous American lives. There were other commendations, other incidents where her skills had proven decisive. A Navy Cross recommendation for actions during a particularly fierce firefight. Multiple citations for distinguished service. Letters of recommendation from commanding officers who praised her professionalism, skill, and dedication. Steele closed the folder and leaned back in his chair, feeling the weight of his mistake settling over him like a heavy blanket. He had allowed his preconceptions to blind him to the reality of who Martinez was and what she had accomplished. But the damage was already done. Word of his confrontation with Martinez had spread throughout the base, creating divisions and undermining morale. Other female Marines were watching to see how the situation would be resolved, while their male counterparts were questioning Steele's judgment. The next morning, Steele found himself facing a decision that would define his command and his character. He could double down on his initial assessment, using his authority to force Martinez's transfer despite her obvious qualifications. Or he could acknowledge his error and work to repair the damage he had caused. As he prepared for another day of training, Steele knew that his next actions would be watched closely by everyone under his command. The easy path would be to quietly transfer Martinez without admitting fault, preserving his ego at the cost of fairness and unit cohesion. But the right path would require something much more difficult: admitting he had been wrong and taking responsibility for his prejudiced judgment. The choice would reveal not just what kind of commander Steele was, but what kind of man he truly wanted to be. Colonel Steele barely slept that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Martinez's face as he had dismissed her capabilities, heard his own words echoing with cruel certainty. The personnel file lay open on his nightstand, a constant reminder of how spectacularly wrong he had been. By dawn, he had made his decision. Steele arrived at the training facility earlier than usual, finding Martinez already on the range conducting her morning routine. She was methodically cleaning her rifle, her movements precise and professional despite the uncertainty hanging over her future. "Staff Sergeant Martinez," Steele called out as he approached. She came to attention immediately. "Sir." Steele studied her face, noting the controlled wariness in her eyes. She had every reason to distrust him, yet she maintained perfect military bearing. Her professionalism in the face of his prejudice made his shame even deeper. "I need to speak with you in my office. Now." "Yes, sir." The walk to his office was conducted in uncomfortable silence. Other Marines watched their passage with obvious curiosity, word having spread about the previous day's confrontation and Martinez's exceptional performance during the qualification exercise. Once inside his office, Steele gestured for Martinez to take a seat while he remained standing, pacing behind his desk with obvious agitation. "Staff Sergeant, I owe you an explanation and an apology." Martinez's expression didn't change, but Steele noticed a slight shift in her posture. She hadn't expected this direction for the conversation. "Last night I read your complete personnel file," Steele continued, his voice thick with regret. "Your combat record, your commendations, the lives you saved in Afghanistan. I should have reviewed these materials before making any judgments about your capabilities." He stopped pacing and faced her directly. "I allowed my personal biases to cloud my professional judgment, and I treated you with disrespect that no Marine deserves, especially one who has served with such distinction." Martinez remained silent, her dark eyes fixed on Steele's face as she processed his words. "Your Bronze Star with Valor, your Navy Cross recommendation, the commendations from your commanding officers in Afghanistan, these paint a picture of a Marine who has already proven herself under the worst possible conditions. While I was questioning your readiness for combat, you had already saved lives in actual firefights." Steele moved to his desk and picked up her file. 47 confirmed kills. 12 Marines saved during the convoy ambush. Multiple successful missions as a designated marksman. Your record speaks to exceptional skill, courage, and dedication. He set the file down and looked directly at Martinez. "I was wrong, Staff Sergeant. Completely, unforgivably wrong. My behavior yesterday was unprofessional and based on prejudices that have no place in the Marine Corps." For the first time since entering the office, Martinez spoke. "Thank you for saying that, sir." "Don't thank me yet," Steele said grimly. "I need to fix this mess I've created, and that means more than just a private apology." Steele walked to his office door and opened it. In the hallway outside stood Master Sergeant Thompson and several other instructors and senior Marines. Their presence wasn't coincidental, Steele had asked them to gather there. "Please come in," Steele said to the group. "What I have to say concerns all of you." As the Marines filed into his office, Steele positioned himself where everyone could see and hear him clearly. Martinez remained seated, uncertain about what was happening but maintaining her composure. "Gentlemen," Steele began, his voice carrying the weight of command authority, "yesterday I made a serious error in judgment regarding Staff Sergeant Martinez's qualifications for the sniper program." The room was completely silent, every Marine focused intently on their commanding officer. "I allowed personal prejudices to influence my assessment of her capabilities, and I treated her with disrespect that was both unprofessional and undeserved. After reviewing her complete service record, I understand that Staff Sergeant Martinez is not only qualified for this program, she is one of the most accomplished combat veterans any of us have had the privilege to work with." Steele gestured toward Martinez. This Marine has 47 confirmed kills in combat operations. She has saved the lives of fellow Marines under fire. She has been recommended for the Navy Cross for her actions during a firefight in Afghanistan. Her shooting performance yesterday was not surprising to anyone who had bothered to review her qualifications. It was simply consistent with her established record of excellence. The assembled Marines exchanged glances, clearly processing this information and its implications. As your commanding officer, I take full responsibility for my mistake, Steele continued. I also want to make it clear that Staff Sergeant Martinez has earned her place in this program through merit, performance, and sacrifice. Anyone who questions her qualifications or her right to be here will answer to me personally. Steele turned to address Martinez directly. Staff Sergeant, I formally apologize for my behavior yesterday. You deserve better leadership than I displayed, and I give you my word that you will receive the respect and support you have earned. Martinez stood and came to attention. Thank you, sir. I appreciate your words and your leadership in addressing this situation. Master Sergeant Thompson stepped forward. Sir, if I may. Staff Sergeant Martinez's performance yesterday was among the finest I've witnessed in 15 years of instruction. Her combat experience and technical skills make her an exceptional addition to the program. Agreed, Steele said. Which brings me to my next point. Staff Sergeant Martinez, I'm assigning you as Senior Instructor for Advanced Marksmanship Techniques. Your combat experience and proven abilities make you uniquely qualified to teach our Marines skills that could save their lives in theater. The promotion was unexpected, and Martinez's carefully controlled expression showed a flicker of surprise. Sir, I'm honored by your confidence. It's not confidence, Staff Sergeant. It's recognition of demonstrated capability. Over the following weeks, the change in atmosphere at the training facility was dramatic. Martinez threw herself into her new role with the same dedication she had shown in combat. Her instruction sessions were intense, professional, and highly effective. More importantly, her presence began breaking down barriers that had existed for years. Young Marines, both male and female, saw in her an example of what was possible when performance mattered more than prejudice. Steele made a point of attending Martinez's instruction sessions, both to show his support and to learn from her expertise. He discovered that her teaching style was notably different from traditional approaches, more analytical, more focused on understanding the science behind marksmanship rather than simply following established patterns. During one particular session, Martinez was demonstrating advanced wind reading techniques to a group of experienced Marines. Her explanation was clear, detailed, and based on hard-earned combat experience. Wind is never constant, she explained while setting up a shot at 800 yards. You need to read it at multiple points between your position and the target. The vegetation will tell you one story near your position, but conditions at the target may be completely different. She fired, and the shot struck precisely where she had predicted based on her wind calculations. In Afghanistan, I learned that patience saves lives. The enemy sniper who rushes his shot is the one who misses when it matters most. Better to wait for the right conditions than to take a shot you're not certain of. Steele watched the faces of the Marines listening to her instruction. They were absorbing not just technique but wisdom earned through actual combat experience. Her credibility was unquestionable because she had proven herself where it mattered most. After the session, Steele approached Martinez as she was cleaning her equipment. That was excellent instruction, Staff Sergeant. Your students are learning things that could keep them alive downrange. Thank you, sir. That's the goal. Steele hesitated, then continued. I've been thinking about our conversation in my office. About admitting mistakes and learning from them. Martinez looked up from her rifle cleaning kit. Sir? I spent 22 years in the Corps thinking I understood what made a good Marine. Turns out I was missing some important pieces of the picture. Martinez nodded slowly. We all have things to learn, sir. The Corps is changing, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. You're right, Steele said. Change isn't the enemy, ignorance is. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a young female Marine who approached hesitantly. Excuse me, Staff Sergeant Martinez? I'm Private First Class Chen. I was hoping to ask you about the Advanced Marksmanship course. Martinez smiled warmly. Of course, Chen. What would you like to know? As Martinez began discussing the requirements and expectations with the young Marine, Steele observed the interaction with new understanding. Chen's eyes showed the same determination he had seen in countless Marines over his career, the desire to excel, to contribute, to prove themselves worthy of the uniform. Steele realized that his role as a leader wasn't to decide who deserved opportunities based on his personal comfort level. His job was to identify capability, develop potential, and ensure that every Marine had the chance to serve to their fullest ability. The weeks that followed brought steady improvements to the program. Martinez's expertise elevated the quality of instruction, while her presence challenged everyone to examine their own assumptions and biases. Steele found himself becoming a better leader through the process. He began paying more attention to individual capabilities rather than superficial characteristics. He started asking better questions about performance and potential. Most importantly, he learned that admitting mistakes wasn't a sign of weakness, it was a prerequisite for growth. One evening, as Steele was reviewing training reports in his office, Thompson knocked on his door. "Come in, Master Sergeant." "Sir, I wanted to update you on the program statistics. Since Staff Sergeant Martinez joined the instruction staff, our pass rates have improved by 15%, and feedback from graduates has been consistently positive." Steele nodded with satisfaction. "She's making a difference." "Yes, sir. But I think the bigger impact has been on unit culture. The Marines see that merit matters more than demographics. It's creating an environment where everyone feels they can succeed based on performance." "That's exactly what we should be striving for," Steele said. "Every Marine deserves to be evaluated on their capabilities, not their appearance." As Thompson left, Steele reflected on how much had changed since that first morning on the range. His certainty had been shaken, his prejudices challenged, and his understanding deepened. He had learned that true leadership required the courage to admit errors, the wisdom to learn from them, and the character to do better going forward. Martinez had taught him more than just marksmanship principles. She had demonstrated that excellence comes in many forms, and that the strongest units are built on respect for capability rather than conformity to expectations. Steele's initial strike had been based on ignorance. His recovery was built on understanding. The lesson would stay with him for the rest of his career.